I thought armies changed history, but now I want to know something sharper. Which single battles bent the future in one day? A battle is never just noise. It is politics, geography, technology, morale, command, timing, and fear compressed into one decision. This journey is not about praising violence. I am looking for battles whose consequences traveled far beyond the soldiers who fought them. Some ancient numbers are uncertain, so I will speak carefully. Roughly, according to tradition, at its height, or in many accounts. Our first stop is a plain near Athens, where a local defense became one of the most famous warnings in imperial history. Chapter 1 takes me to Marathon, where a smaller Greek force faced an empire and proved distance, timing, and courage could change history. The numbers are debated, but the story is clear. Athens did not meet a simple raid. It met the reach of the Persian world. Here, the hoplite shield, long spear, and close formation become more than equipment. They become a wall of civic survival. Marathon is not just a battlefield. The plain, the coast, the marshy edges, and the road to Athens all shape the decision. The Greek line moves with terrifying discipline, trying to close distance before arrows can decide the day. From this close, the army feels less like legend and more like neighbors carrying their city on bronze and leather. The clash stays hidden behind dust and shields, but the meaning is visible. A great empire has been stopped at the shore. When the Persian force fails to break Athens here, the story of Greece remains open for one more dangerous century. Marathon mattered because one afternoon helped protect a political and cultural world that would echo far beyond Greece. What I remember from Marathon is not a perfect myth, but a narrow moment when fear did not become surrender. Even victory here did not end the Persian threat, and Greece would still face a larger storm years later. Before I leave Marathon, the plain feels quiet again, but the coastline still carries the memory of decision. The next portal pulls me east, toward a battlefield where an empire far larger than Greece will finally break. Chapter 2 opens at Gaugamela, where Alexander faces Darius and the fate of the Achaemenid Persian Empire hangs over one vast plain. Persia brings size, cavalry, wealth, and royal authority. Macedonia brings speed, nerve, and a command system built for shock. The Sarissa pikes create a moving forest, while the companion cavalry waits for one gap that can decide everything. Darius chooses open ground to use cavalry and chariots, but open space also gives Alexander room to create angles. Alexander does not simply charge forward. He pulls, stretches, and distorts the Persian line until weakness appears. Behind every famous maneuver are soldiers who cannot see the whole plan, only dust, horses, orders, and fear. The decisive impact is hidden by dust, but the formation tells the story. A center opens and a king is threatened. When Darius withdraws, the empire does not fall in 1 second, but its political heart has been exposed. Gaugamela mattered because it opened the road from a Macedonian kingdom to a Hellenistic world across Asia. What I remember here is the silence after movement, when the largest power on Earth suddenly seems vulnerable. Alexander wins brilliantly, but a victory that conquers empires can also create problems no army can hold forever. Before I leave Gaugamela, the plain looks endless, as if conquest itself has become too large to control. From this dusty battlefield, the portal bends toward China, where ships, fire, and river strategy reshape a fractured dynasty. Chapter 3 carries me onto the Yangtze, where red cliffs turns a river into the boundary of an entire future China. Cao Cao's northern power presses south, but numbers alone cannot command illness, weather, water, morale, and unfamiliar terrain. Here the weapons are ships, arrows, wind, fire, and timing. The river itself becomes part of the army. The Yangtze is not background scenery. It is the obstacle, the road, the trap, and the reason this battle matters. The Southern Alliance survives by refusing to meet Northern strength on Northern terms, forcing the fight onto water. On these decks, history feels fragile. One wrong gust, one burning hull, and thousands of plans become smoke. The naval clash stays distant and non-graphic, but the river glows with the danger of a fleet losing control. When Cao Cao's advance fails here, the dream of quickly reunifying China under one northern power collapses. Red Cliffs mattered because it helped shape the Three Kingdoms world and preserved a north-south balance for generations. What I remember is not only the fire, but the intelligence to choose the battlefield before the battle begins. Even victory at Red Cliffs does not create peace. It creates a different kind of long and divided struggle. Before I leave Red Cliffs, the river mist hides the ships, but it cannot hide the consequence. The next door opens in Western Europe, where a Frankish army stands between a raid and a historical debate. Chapter 4 brings me to Tours, a battle remembered not only for what happened, but for what later generations believed it meant. The exact battlefield and numbers remain debated, yet the confrontation still became a symbol of frontier power in medieval Europe. Here, heavy infantry discipline faces mobile cavalry pressure, and the ground itself decides how much speed can matter. The wooded ridges and autumn fields make this place feel smaller than legend, but smaller ground can carry huge consequences. Charles Martel holds formation, forcing the opposing force to attack into a position where momentum loses some of its advantage. Standing near the line, I can feel how patience becomes a weapon when every soldier wants the fear to end. The fighting remains behind shields and dust, but the visual truth is clear: the line does not easily break. As the Umayyad force withdraws, the Frankish victory becomes part military event, part memory, and part historical argument. Tours mattered because it strengthened Frankish authority and became one of Europe's most famous stories about defense and identity. What I remember here is caution. Some battles become powerful not only through facts, but through the meanings people attach. This battle did not settle every question about Europe or Islam, and serious history must avoid turning it into a simple myth. Before I leave Tours, the quiet field reminds me that later memory can be louder than the original battle. The next portal crosses the Channel, where one day in 1066 will redirect England's language, nobility, and future. Chapter 5 places me on a hill in England, where Hastings begins as a succession crisis and ends as a new ruling order. This is not the largest battle in history, but its political effect is enormous because a kingdom changes hands. The shield wall gives England weight and endurance, while Norman cavalry and archers create pressure from different directions. The hill matters. Holding high ground gives the defenders strength, but also traps them inside a brutal test of stamina. The Norman attack shifts between arrows, infantry, cavalry, and feigned withdrawals, searching for cracks in the shield wall. From this vantage point, the field feels overwhelmed with exhaustion. Genuine power here doesn't come from aggression, but from simply enduring longer than the fear. The direct violence stays hidden by shields and distance, but the pressure on the line becomes heavier every second. When the English formation finally loses cohesion, the battle becomes the doorway to Norman rule over England. Hastings mattered because it reshaped English aristocracy, law, landholding, language, castles, and connections to continental Europe. What I remember is how one hill can become a hinge between one version of England and another. The Norman victory did not instantly transform everything, but it began a deep restructuring that lasted for generations. Before I leave Hastings, the slope feels like a page where England's future has been rewritten without words. The next portal takes me far east of Europe, toward a place where the Mongol advance finally meets a wall. Chapter 6 arrives at Ain Jalut, where the reputation of the Mongol war machine meets a disciplined Mamluk counterstroke. The numbers are uncertain, but the psychological scale is immense because many believed the Mongol advance could not be stopped. Both sides understand the horse, the bow, the feigned retreat, and the sudden counterattack. This is speed against speed. The valley gives commanders places to hide movement, bait pursuit, and turn local geography into a tactical weapon. The Mamluks do not defeat fear by ignoring it. They use discipline, timing, and controlled withdrawal to shape the fight. Here, every rider seems to know that one mistake could open the road to Cairo or close it forever. The cavalry action stays distant and dust-covered, but the rhythm changes when the trap begins to close. When the Mongol force is broken, the western expansion of Mongol power meets one of its most famous limits. Ain Jalut mattered because it protected Egypt and changed the aura of invincibility around Mongol conquest. What I remember here is the sound of hooves fading, as if history itself has hit a boundary. This was not the end of Mongol power everywhere, but it was a decisive halt in this direction. Before I leave Ain Jalut, the valley feels like proof that even the fastest empire can be forced to stop. The next portal rises around walls, cannon smoke, and a city that had stood for more than 1,000 years. Chapter 7 surrounds me with walls, sea, and cannon smoke because Constantinople is not just attacked, an era is ending. For 55 days, the city is pressed from land and lee, while Ottoman artillery tests ancient defenses in a new age. The cannon matters because stone walls that once defined security now face the shock of gunpowder and industrial preparation. Constantinople's position is magnificent. Water, walls, harbors, and gates combine into one of history's great defensive spaces. Mehmed's army surrounds, bombards, builds, moves ships, and keeps pressure constant until endurance becomes the final battlefield. Inside the walls, the scale feels human again. Defenders repair stone by night, while an empire waits outside. The final assault stays distant and smoke-covered, but the broken wall tells the story without showing graphic harm. When Constantinople falls, the Byzantine Empire ends, and Ottoman power gains a capital worthy of its ambition. This siege mattered because it marked a dramatic shift in Mediterranean power, urban warfare, and the age of cannon. What I remember is the sound of stone giving way, like the old world admitting a new one. The fall was not caused by cannon alone. Politics, geography, manpower, money, and timing all mattered. Before I leave Constantinople, the walls no longer look eternal, and that may be the most important lesson. From these walls, the portal opens to a muddy European field where Napoleon's final gamble reaches its end. Chapter 8 drops me into Waterloo, where Napoleon's legend meets mud, timing, resistance, and the arrival of another army. This battle is not only about one commander, it is about coalitions, endurance, delayed attacks, and the pressure of Europe closing in. Muskets, artillery, cavalry, infantry squares, and fortified farms turn the field into a deadly puzzle of range and timing. The mud matters because it slows movement, delays attacks, and turns every decision into a race against the clock. Napoleon seeks a breakthrough before the Prussians arrive, while Wellington's line absorbs punishment and refuses to vanish. From here, the battlefield feels less like a legend and more like exhausted men waiting for the next thunder. The charge remains distant and smoke-covered, but the square formations show how discipline can survive fear. When Prussian pressure combines with Allied resistance, the French attack loses the time it needed to win. Waterloo mattered because it ended Napoleon's return and helped shape Europe's political order for decades. What I remember is the mud, because sometimes history turns not on glory, but on delay. Waterloo did not erase Napoleon's military genius, but it proved that even genius can be trapped by time and coalition. Before I leave Waterloo, the smoke thins over a field where ambition finally runs out of minutes. The next portal opens above a vast ocean, where aircraft carriers replace kings and cavalry as the center of battle. Chapter 9 takes me to Midway, where the battlefield is mostly sky and ocean, and information becomes as decisive as firepower. Carrier warfare turns distance into danger. Fleets can strike without seeing each other, and a few minutes can change the Pacific. Here, the decisive weapons are aircraft, carriers, code-breaking, timing, fuel, deck operations, and pilots finding targets over open water. The ocean offers no walls and no hills, only horizon, weather, range, and the terrifying uncertainty of where the enemy is. Midway shows that intelligence can prepare the battlefield before the first aircraft leaves the deck. On the carrier deck, history feels mechanical and human at once. Engines roar while young crews move with practiced fear. The strike is shown from distance through smoke and ocean glare, avoiding graphic impact while revealing the scale of the loss. When Japan loses first-line carrier strength, the strategic momentum of the Pacific War begins to shift away from expansion. Midway mattered because it damaged Japan's offensive power and gave the United States a turning point at sea. What I remember is the empty horizon, because the most dangerous enemy here may be invisible until it is too late. Midway did not end the Pacific War, but it changed the balance of initiative in a way no commander could ignore. Before I leave Midway, the ocean looks calm again, hiding how quickly history can move through the sky. The final portal turns cold and gray toward a city where streets, factories, rivers, and winter become weapons. Chapter 10 brings me to Stalingrad, where a city becomes a battlefield, and a battlefield becomes the turning point of a front. This is one of the war's deadliest struggles. The script must show scale through streets, weather, industry, and endurance, not gore. The scale of this industrial conflict is hard to comprehend. Looking at this weathered tank tread, you feel the weight of the city changes war itself. Every building, stairwell, factory wall, and riverbank can become a defensive position. The Soviet defense holds inside the ruins, while a counteroffensive outside the city prepares to surround the attackers. From this safe vantage point, the cold feels like another army, pressing on every breath and every movement. The urban fighting remains hidden by smoke, snow, and distance, but the shattered industrial skyline carries the weight. The Battle of Stalingrad, a turning point that would alter the course of the Eastern Front forever. Stalingrad mattered because it stopped a major German advance and marked a turning tide in favor of the Allies. What I remember is the silence after the guns, because the city seems to have survived by refusing to disappear. No single battle explains the whole war, but Stalingrad became one of its most powerful symbols of reversal. Before I leave Stalingrad, the snow covers the ruins, but it cannot cover what changed here. The portals close behind me, and the question is no longer which battle was loudest, but which changed the future most. After 10 battles, the pattern is clear. History rarely turns because of strength alone. It turns when strength meets timing. The battlefield is never empty. Geography, weather, disease, supply, communication, morale, and leadership all fight beside the soldiers. The most powerful side does not always control the outcome, because a battle can punish arrogance faster than any speech can explain. That is why these stories matter. They remind us that victory is temporary, consequences are long, and war always costs more than leaders promise. I came searching for battles that changed history, and I found something harder to forget. The future is often decided before anyone understands it.